Do you ever stand back and look at your life and feel some regrets about maybe people you didn't spend time with? Are you ready to begin shifting and to experience more joy, deeper connections, and fullness? Then sit back, relax, and let's go get that nugget. Welcome to Life Mastery for Women. I'm your host, Jen Mack, Lady of the Mind. Join me here 3 times a week for empowering conversations, powerful tools, and techniques to help you experience more joy, healing, and deeper connections in your life. Get ready, ladies. It's time to get that nugget of inspiration towards your transformation. Life is hard, but your personal growth doesn't have to be. Hey ladies, it's Jen Mack, Lady of the Mind. Welcome to today's episode where I hope I am finding you living a life without regrets. If you're not living a life without regrets, then it is my intention that in today's episode, I give you just one nugget of inspiration towards your transformation. My dad was just here. He spent a couple of days with us in our chaotic, very small house with my little dog barking at him the whole entire weekend, or the whole, it's not been the weekend because today's Wednesday and he just left probably half an hour ago. And, but yeah, you know, my littlest dog, does not have a lot of confidence when it comes to strangers. And though it got progressively better, it still was annoying. And it's a small dog, so it's that high-pitched bark, you know. That's Zoe, if you've ever heard me talk about her in my podcast. And she's a Chihuahua Rat Terrier mix. And, you know, it has its downfalls to having a small, noisy dog. So anyway, it was a little bit of a chaotic visit, not with my dad necessarily, but just an added person into our tiny little shoebox of a house. And, but I will tell you this, we had some great conversations. And one of the conversations, which leads me to this podcast today, is that we were talking about our grandparents. So his grandparents, as well as my grandparents, his and my mom's parents, right? And we were talking about, I made a comment about, you know, the thing that I regret or feel bad about, not so much regret yet, but feel bad about is that, you know, as a young adult, you know, my grandparents were already in their mid to late 70s and spending little bits of time here and there, but I didn't really have anything to share with them. I was mostly single at the time or in college or, you know, a weenie little job or whatever, not a lot of excitement to share. And I remember thinking, you know, after they passed away, that it would have been great to be able to have, time with them as I was more into adulthood with my solid relationship with my kids after I adopted Bob, for them to meet like their great grandkids. And it just never happened. You know, I didn't get my life together fast enough. It just wasn't in the cards. And it's one of the things that I regret not being able to experience is to showcase, you know, my life as now an adult. And to me, when I say adult, like I really mean someone who's like married or they're in a solid relationship, they've got some kids. That to me feels more adult than just because I'm 22. Like that didn't feel like an adult to me. That felt like holy crap freedom as a kid. Like I was still very childish at 22. But I had some fun. Anyway, so then as we get to talking, he's like, you know, I feel the same way that I didn't go and spend time with my grandparents before they passed away. And I remember thinking about what his life was like. And he spent every summer with his grandparents and they lived in Canada. And he would spend every summer there. And I'm like, I never had even that. Like mine were just little tiny visits, you know, a little visit here and there for a week or two at the most. But I feel like living a life of regret is it's a really poor decision. There are times when my grandma Lametta, which is my mom's mom, when she passed away, she was the last of my grandparents to pass away. And she was the one that really, really got to me straight to the core. She was the one that went out of her way to spend time with me, to really engage with me, to really make me feel like I was so special and so important. And I valued her and her friendship and my relationship with her so much that when she passed away, a huge, huge, huge part of my heart went with her. And she passed away in January of 2010. And so it's 13 years. And every day I think about her, and every day I could turn myself inside out, thinking about her and thinking about my relationship with her. And she never got to meet Amy. She never got to meet my son, Bob, or obviously our two kids, Brandon and Cameron. And she never got to be a part of that. And so that is a regret, though there's not much I can do about it. I didn't have that relationship, and I obviously didn't have the kids, and, she passed away. But what I do regret is not spending an immense amount of time with her. That I would give pretty much anything to spend another day with her. And she was so valuable to me and so important to me. And then I sit back and go, okay, why didn't I go visit her more? I live in northern Michigan, and she lived in Detroit, near Detroit, Grosse Pointe Woods. And what was the problem? Like, why didn't I make that a priority? In yesterday's podcast, we talked about our values. We talked about taking our power back. And my number one value is my physical body, my health and wellness, and feeling good in my physical body. And my second value was quality time with Amy, and my third was quality time basically with the rest of the family. When I was younger, I don't think my value was that. My value was not in that order. And so I didn't have my order of importance in order, in my priorities. And now I regret that. So if you haven't listened to yesterday's podcast, which is how to take your power back, I advise that you do, because it is so important to have your priorities in order. For the rest of my days, I want to live a life with no regrets. And I want the same for you, because to me, when I'm lying on my deathbed, I want to look back at my life and go, I did everything I wanted to do. I saw everything I wanted to see. I spent time with those people that I wanted to spend time with. I made decisions that shifted and molded my life in such a great way that I have no regrets. That is my goal. Now, we never know when we're going to go. And so I say, why wait? I've had several conversations with my dad, as my dad is 73 years old. And he's quite the adventurer. He used to have a sailboat that he would go and sail all over the place, and he would live on this boat. And then he finally sold it. Now he wants to get a little travel trailer. And the unfortunate part is he's married to a woman who does not really value that same kind of adventure that my dad does. And so just like I was talking about in yesterday's podcast, is he allows his marriage sometimes to prevent him from doing those big, grand things. And so his advice to me, even just these last couple of days, he said, is start creating your bucket list and start checking things off your bucket list. Start putting things in your bucket. But he's like, go do those things. He's like, I wanted to go to the Badlands, and I wanted to go to the Grand Canyon, and I've wanted to go back to Scotland and go to, Italy, back to Scotland. I don't know if he's ever been, but he's like, and now because I'm 73 and just where my life is and who I'm married to and the choices I've made, I don't think I'm going to complete those tasks, those things. And that makes me very sad for him. And he also deals with some depression. And I think, well, no kidding, right? If I look at my life and, I'm nearing what could possibly be the end of my life, and I've got, a handful of years left. I have less years left than what I have lived. I want to start living. So whatever that means for you, and whatever that means to anybody, is what does that look like? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? What do you want to see? Who do you want to spend time with? And then starting to create that list, because I don't ever want to be somewhere in my life that goes, well, yeah, because I kept that job that I hated. That's why I never traveled, because I never made enough money, or I spent money on all this other stuff, which is stuff. And there are some things that I want to experience that include stuff. But what I'm saying is, let's prioritize our life. Let's everybody stop for a second, look at your life in the palm of your hand and go, what do I want to change? How do I want to live going forward from this very moment? There are chances that our body's going to start weakening in areas. So do you want to start working out? Do you want to start strength training? Because I don't know about you, but my goal is to increase my adventure and my fun and my freedom and some travel. And I need a body that's in good shape to be able to do that. And so I better get downstairs and start working out. I better start going to the gym. I better start taking care of my body, because I want my body to take care of me. It's the only house I have to truly live in. I better take care of it. And so I want you to take a moment to look at your life and go, what are the things that I'm doing or not doing that I wish was different? Am I working somewhere that I don't want to be working? Am I in a relationship that is not supportive or loving or doesn't allow me that kind of freedom? And I just mean the support, like within, like I was talking about with a previous relationship is, I wanted to go rock climbing. And for some reason, I made the decision not to go, and I stopped going, and I started to regret not going. And it started to kind of create this resentment and bitterness. Well, it doesn't mean you have to leave the relationship if the relationship has all these positives, right? Don't leave the relationship, but make sure, how do you go rock climbing? How do you go do the thing? If your husband or wife won't travel with you, well, I say go make some friends and figure out how you can start traveling. Okay? I think when we start living from that perspective that says, our life is temporary. And I want mine to be the very, very best it can be. I want mine to be inclusive, if that's the right word, inclusive, including all of these different experiences. I don't want to be on my deathbed going, well, I never made it to Italy. My mom's side of the family is from Italy. I never made it to Scotland, which is my dad's side of the family. And I never did this, or I never did that, or I didn't hang out with this person more. And it's so ridiculous to go, this is my life right here in this very moment. And I want to take charge, and I want it to be the most beautiful experience that I could possibly have. So looking at your life, look at a couple of different categories. I think the very first one would be health, is looking at that category. Your physical health, your mental health, your spiritual health, your emotional health. How are you feeling physically, mentally, spiritually? Do you feel connected? Do you feel grounded? Do you feel physically amazing? What are some changes that you can make that will help you to start feeling better? Sometimes eating better helps you to balance more. And sometimes just changing some foods and getting some nutrition ideas and some nutritional help and changing some foods can really start to balance out your hormones and your adrenals and some gut health. I mean, I'm learning some of that, and it's amazing of how my emotional state has balanced like within just a matter of a couple of weeks by shifting from eating some simple carbs, which I know are not good for me because they do create a lot of inflammation. Again, not trying to be a nutritionist because I'm not a nutritionist, but not trying to give nutritional advice. But I will say there is a lot that you can do with some simple food changes that can help to give you some internal support that just make you feel better, giving you more energy, helping you to sleep better, helping your adrenals, your hormones to balance. And it's amazing when you start feeling better from that place, just how much more energy you have to go do some of the other stuff, like some physical exercise. But just rate yourself on like a scale from 1 to 5. How do you feel in the health department? The next would be your relationships. How are your relationships? And you can divide this into as many categories as you have friends and family. How's your relationship with your spouse? And if it's not that great, what can you do? What can the both of you do? Let's come together and say, okay, you rate our relationship and I'll rate our relationship and see if they're the same. I was in a previous relationship where I think I would have given the relationship probably 2 stars, and I think she would have given it probably 4. Now that's a little bit of a problem. And it is and it isn't. But what it ends up happening is that the other person who's a 4 goes, yeah, I don't know, our relationship's pretty good. And I'm a 2, and I'm like, okay, well, there's some things that need to change. And then that person doesn't see the changes that need to happen, or they don't agree with it because they're a 4, right? So that can create a little bit of some stickiness. But what can I do? What can I do to improve my relationships with my spouse? What can I do to improve my relationships with my kids or my extended family, my parents? If you have grandkids, siblings, what can you do? And rating that. And then just doing a teeny tiny bit at a time. Maybe it's just a phone call once a week for a half an hour. Maybe it's a letter. Maybe it's an email. Maybe it's a text message. Maybe it's it's getting together for a cup of coffee or something. But something. When you start putting yourself in the driver's seat like this, when it comes to that, it's amazing how fast your life starts to improve. And you might be going, Jen, my family lives really far away. I don't have a lot of money. And it's like, there's Facebook, there's texting, there's email, there's phone calls. And it is absolutely 100% amazing how you can maintain a relationship these days simply with technology. Because remember back then, if you're as old as me, remember back then it was like long distance calls and collect calls, and there was no email and there was no text messaging, and you had to be home. And when they did call, they weren't, when you called them, they weren't home, and you're leaving messages on their answering machine. That tells you how old I am. But it is worth it. It is worth it. Like I said, I would give anything to be able to have phone call conversations every week or several times a week with my grandma. I miss her and every day. And I think that it would be 1,000% amazing to be able to still have that in my life. The next is your wealth. Now, wealth to me is not just your money. Obviously, that is a part of it, but it is how you make your money. How does your money come into you? Do you just have one stream of income and that is with your job? And then what if you lose your job? What if your boss gets a bug up his or her butt and decides to lay a bunch of people off and out you go? And you might go, well, my job's really secure. What if it's not, though? And do you love it? So rating your job or your career on a scale from 1 to 5, how much do you overall love where you work and how you make your money? The next would be if you make your money in other streams of income, which I highly advise. And as an entrepreneur, I think having the most streams of income in our day and age, especially how prices are going, is such a valid or such an important part of living today. Because if one stream kicks out for whatever reason, I have other streams of income coming in. And I think that it's really important. And I also think that it's pretty darn easy to do. Now, do you have the skills to do it? You may or may not. It doesn't mean that it's less easy. It just means that you have to learn new skills. But isn't that with anything else? Instead of giving away so much of your time for your money, getting paid by the hour, let's say, then in order to make more money, you have to exchange more hours. And I say, well, screw that. I love my freedom. I want to get paid while I sleep. So creating passive income, creating courses, writing a blog, writing a book, creating a podcast, doing something that allows you to still have that freedom. Because now we got a bucket list we're going to start checking things off. We got a life that we're not going to have any regrets living. And we're going to live our life to the fullest. And now what are we going to need? We're going to need time and money. So wealth in the form of how your money comes in and also how you're making your money. So your career or your job. The next category is your spiritual connection. This to me is the most fun because it is building the relationship with you. And I remember telling Cameron, he was really upset one time and he was jumping around in the back seat. He was jumping around in the backyard and he was mad about something. I'm sure he couldn't have something or he lost his tablet time or I don't know what. But I remember standing on the deck and he was squatted down by a tree and he was pretty mad. And he started to take his fist. He was kind of banging himself in the head and he was like, I'm so stupid. I'm so stupid. And I immediately stopped him. And I went into the side yard and I was sitting on the step and I beckoned him to come over to me and he sat next to me and I put my arm around him and I said, so let me tell you a little story. I said, if you were out in the backyard and there was a little boy, the same age as you, that was sitting over by that tree and he was banging himself in the head and calling himself stupid, I said, what would you do? And he goes, I would go over there and put my arm around him. And he's probably like 6 or 7 years old. And he said, I would put my arm around him and I would hug him and I would say, you're not stupid, that you're really, really smart. And I said, I want you to say that to yourself right now. And he goes, but Jen, you don't understand. You told me to stop jumping on the furniture. I don't remember what the actual part was. You told me to stop jumping around on the furniture and I kept doing it. And then, I had to leave. I had to go outside. And I said, honey, that doesn't make you stupid. I said, you are not stupid. You are very, very far from stupid. I said, but it's not important what I say or even what I think. I said, it's important what you think. And I said, and if you think you're stupid, your life is going to continue to show you ways in which you are stupid. And he goes, I don't want that. And I said, okay. I said, so here's what I'm going to recommend. And I said, and I will help you do this over the next, several years of us living together. I said, I will help you to become your very own best friend. I said, because you are going to live with yourself for the rest of your life. You might as well be best friends with you. And he's like, okay, Jen. And that's what I'm recommending to you. When we begin a spiritual practice, it really is about becoming our own best friend. And I will tell you, my life was 1,000% miserable between the ages of, I moved to college and it was probably I was 17 years old when I graduated from high school, and I moved to college, and then because I'm a September birthday, and I went to college and I immediately turned 18. So between my 18th and probably 25, maybe even 28, I was miserable. I hated myself. I made stupid mistakes. I did stupid things. I had stupid relationships. And I just did not like myself at all. Well, that's a terrible position to be in. And I value myself now, and I am my own best friend. And I want you to have that same thing. So when you build your spiritual practice, it is about you with you. It is about this relationship that you have with the spiritual version of yourself. And that spiritual version of yourself, your higher self, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, but that higher perspective of you is so helpful when you guys can connect. That becomes your intuitive state, the little nudges you get, the little nudge that says, oh dear, I wouldn't go on that date, or I would avoid that, or I would make this investment, or maybe I would, change how you talk to your kids, right? Those little nudges that kind of keep you on the path that sometimes you don't listen to. Sometimes it's too quiet, and that's okay. But once you build that relationship, you become the most important person in the world. And not in a selfish way, just in a, I need to take care of myself. I need some self-love. I'm going to fill my own bucket, because after I fill my own bucket, now I have more to share. And that's what bucket filling is all about. It is not living a selfish life. It is living a life full of self-love. Now, as we keep moving our lives forward, is keeping these things in front of us to say, you know what? I don't want to have any regrets. What are the things that are the most important to me? Is my family the most important? Then let's figure out how I can have some wonderful experiences with my family. And maybe I do some of those things on my own, because there's going to come a time where those babies aren't living with you anymore. There's going to come a time where those babies have babies of their own, and they live across town, or they live across the state, or they live across the country. And you're going to wish you spent more time with them. I want you to have a life with no regrets. It is something that I am putting on my own plate, and I am working through on my own, and I want you to do the same thing. If this is something that you would love some support with, please reach out. As you're going to hear at my outro here in just a second, you are going to hear some ways to connect with me, and I hope you do. I hope you choose to join the community and become part of something that's great to help you become great. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, I would love for you to like, subscribe, and leave a comment as to how this has inspired you. If you're interested in hearing about our upcoming events or working directly with me in my group coaching program to join a community of women and connect, heal, and create a life that is full of joy, inspiration, and empowerment, then reach out to me via Facebook in either of my two groups, Lady Rising or Chakras for Beginners. There, you can create a post, or you can send me a direct message. Or you can email me at themeditationroomtc@gmail.com. Let's talk and see how I can best support you. In the meantime, keep going, growing, and transforming to keep looking for those nuggets of inspiration.